This woman never pays for her meals. She used all kinds of vouchers, although the shopkeeper despised such people, but he took back all the vouchers. And the reason why the woman was so frugal, it's not because life is difficult. She wanted to use the money she saved to realize her dreams after retirement. But there are always accidents in life. An accident changed her fate. That day, Sean, the co-worker she'd been secretly in love with, was finally ready to ask her out to dinner. But as soon as Sean was in the middle of his sentence, Georgia nervously dropped her cutlery. She was just picking up her spoon. She got up and slammed into the cupboard door. She fainted. Sean rushed her to the hospital. She didn't think it was a big deal, but after some tests, the doctor told her she had cancer, and she only had 3 weeks to live.
What? I got 3 weeks to live? Are you shitting me?
4 on the outside. I'm sorry.
She was faced with a sudden misfortune. Georgia couldn't accept it, so she had a new examination, but the results were the same. At night, Georgia cried as she looked through her wish book. All the dreams she hadn't realized yet. She'd worked so hard for half her life. She thought she was about to be happy, but instead, she got the gift of death. After crying all night, Georgia came to her senses. She wanted to spend her last days fulfilling her wishes. The first thing she did was to go to her boss's office. She took off her high heels and smashed his mobile phone to pieces in front of him.
That's a $400 phone.
The scene stunned her colleagues at the door, and the reason why Georgia did this because she was always angry with her boss. She used to put up with it to make ends meet. Now that her life is about to end, she had to take it out on him. On the way home, Sean found her again, but when it came to the man she loved, Georgia was afraid to accept. She refused Sean with all the sadness she could muster. Then she went to church and vented her frustration to God. When she got home, she threw away her wish list. She went to the bank and withdrew all her savings. Since plans don't always work out the way they should, so she took her last holiday to enjoy herself. She bought economy class as a matter of habit. But the first time she flew, she was bullied by the fat guy in the front row because the fat man was almost sitting on her lap. In the past, it would have been fine. Now she couldn't stand it. She said the airline made the seats so tight to make money, and complained that the fat man was sitting on her lap. That comment struck a chord with the passengers, but the captain told her she could go to first class if she felt cramped, as long as it costs more.
How much for the damn cocoon?
And that's how she ended up in first class. Not only is there more space, the service is also upgraded. After experiencing the life of the rich, she began to change her mindset. She rented a helicopter right off the plane, while enjoying the beautiful scenery on the road. While traveling to her dream hotel, when she arrived over the hotel, the waiters and guests below were stunned. They all thought Georgia was a very important person. After all, the last time she flew in, it was a prince. As soon as Georgia arrived in the lobby, the bellboys were quick to take her luggage. She'd never been to a high-end hotel before. She was a little uncomfortable, and since she arrived early by helicopter, her previously reserved room was not available. The receptionist told her only the presidential suite was left at almost $4,000 a night. She wasn't sure if Georgia wanted it.
See me play?
Soon after, the desk clerk took her upstairs. Not knowing the rules about tipping here, Georgia simply gave him a bunch of notes, but the waiter didn't know who she was. He gave it back to her. He left one for himself. After the waiter left, Georgia began to admire the view from the window. She couldn't help feeling that she'd wasted too many good years. In the time to come, she decided to experience the life of the rich. She just touched the menu. She let the waiter serve it all, and out of respect for the food, she didn't suggest any adjustments. But the officials at the other table, not only were they very picky, they made all sorts of demands, which made the chef in the kitchen very angry.
No butter, no cream, no wheat, no dairy, no fat. Hey, merde! Why do they bother to eat?
But when the chef saw the woman's menu, he felt he'd met his soulmate. He decided to cook for her himself. On the other side, the rich man who had been waiting for a long time saw the chef's arrival. He thought it was for him, but he just nodded. Then he sat down next to the woman. This made the tycoon embarrassed, but it also convinced them that the woman's identity is not ordinary. After all, the chef's reputation can't be hired just by paying money. But what they didn't know was, the woman is just an ordinary person who loves food. Because she found out that she has cancer, she took out all her savings. She wanted to experience the life of the rich in her last days, but she was mistaken for a noblewoman. Watching them chatting and laughing, the senator next to the tycoon was also interested. After dinner, he quietly came to the woman to talk to her, and the rich man who was passing by saw him. He was the richest man in the hotel. He came here to impress the senator, but Georgia's presence stole the show. On the second day of skiing, the tycoon was praising the congressman, but then Georgia came out of nowhere, and that's when the rich man's feelings of entitlement got the better of him. What he didn't realize realize was that Georgia didn't know how to ski, and she did it because she didn't know how to stop. When the tycoon caught up with him, ready to show off, Georgia grabbed him and tried to stop, but that's when the rich man fell. And that made the rich man even more angry. He caught up with Georgia and tried to argue, and they both went down the hill without looking. Georgia was lucky enough to stop, but the tycoon went flying.
You ski like that, you're gonna be in court for the next 2 years.
That's fine with me, baby.
Georgia's fearlessness, the tycoon could do nothing about it. In the evening, the senator invited Georgia to dinner. The chef made her a private table, and so, everyone was seated next to her. At the tycoon's table, there was only one man. He had a look of resentment in his eyes, but he had the nerve to sit down. And then Georgia said she wanted to go bungee jumping. The crowd praised her for her bravery. The counselor even turned down the tycoon's offer to go and support her. The tycoon couldn't stand it any longer. He challenged Georgia, but the next day, Georgia jumped right in without a second thought. But when it was the tycoon's turn, he was so scared, his legs went limp and went over the guardrail in disbelief. When she got back to the hotel, they were all waiting for her at the door. Seeing Georgia so popular, the tycoon was furious, so he paid the hotel manager to find out where Georgia came from. After the manager's search, he found Georgia's old work card and a suicide note she left behind, which stated the arrangements she'd made after she left. The manager read it and felt very guilty. Georgia was attending a function for the rich. It was as if most of her life's luck had come together. No matter how much she bet, she always won. Georgia felt like the gods were playing a trick on her.
Now you changed my luck for the better. You know what? I'm not playing with you no more.
When she got back to the hotel, the manager confessed everything. He hugged Georgia and asked for her forgiveness, and then he promised her that he wouldn't tell anyone who she was. But Georgia didn't care. But the tycoon found out about Georgia's identity from another source, and was prepared to expose her at the dinner party.